Hello everyone, this is part 3 of What If Naruto Travels Back in Time, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Naruto sat alone in his tent, his hand clenched around one of the few pictures of Tsunade that he had. After returning to camp, Naruto had decided to take a nap, only to wake up to chaos. Tobi had gone on a rampage after he found out that Naruto got away and the Gedo Mazo was destroyed, or mostly destroyed anyway. From the scattered reports they had gotten from the survivors who had made it back, they had almost released the Biju and destroyed the containment seals in the Gedo Mazo. They were going to finally make it crumble, but Tobi had appeared before them. Without saying a word, he had managed to decimate their forces that had remained behind to complete the destruction. They lost the majority of their forces, but the biggest loss was that of Tsunade, the Hokage. No one who survived and made it back could really say what happened. 1 second they were fighting, and the next second the Hokage had been thrown back against one of the walls of the nearby cavern. She never rose after that. The Raikage had attempted to check on her, but Tobi had teleported right in front of the Raikage and did the same thing. Went flying into the wall as well, but he proved to be more resilient than the Hokage as he remained conscious, if barely moving. Tobi moved to finish the man off, but as if on cue the Gedo Mazo began to groan and fall apart, distracting the immortal. He quickly lost interest in the two cages, and instead focused his efforts on keeping the statue together. The remaining forces that were still alive managed to recover the wounded while Tobi was distracted, including the Raikage and Hokage. Upon their return, the dead had been laid to rest, including Tsunade. As for the Raikage, he had a crushed lower spine, and would likely never be able to walk again. Had Tsunade still been alive, may have been able to at least walk again without assistance, but with her death he would likely remain a cripple for the rest of his life. Naruto snapped from his musings. The blonde slowly looked up to see who was addressing him. His eyes widened to see Nara Shikaku standing before him. He hadn't even heard the man come into the room. "What do you need, Shikaku-san?" The older man smiled grimly. "The Jonins all took a vote, and we've already talked to the daimyo through the shinobi we have stationed with him. I've got some people I need you to talk with, if you're feeling up to it." Nodding slowly, Naruto slowly rose to his feet, and wiped at his eyes. "There's no rush. Take your time and prepare yourself." Naruto gave the man a curious look, but Shikaku's face betrayed no emotion. Shrugging, the young man wandered over towards his wash basin, quickly splashing some water on his face and then grabbing a towel to dry off. Taking a deep breath and steadying himself, Naruto nodded at Shikamaru's father, only for the man to nod in return and gesture towards the tent flap. Steeling himself, Naruto stepped outside, only to stop halfway and stare wide-eyed at the assembly before him. It looked like every person from the camp was standing outside, be they from Konoha or elsewhere. The Kazekage Gaara, Shukage Onoki, Mizukage Mei, and even the now crippled Raikage was sitting on a rock in the front of the group, staring at him expectantly. He felt a gentle nudge from behind, and remembered that Shikaku was behind him. Taking a step forward, he promptly turned around to face the other man. The question he was going to ask died on his lips as Shikaku spoke up first, a small grin on his face. "It might be a little sudden, but the United Shinobi Army awaits your commands, Rokudaime Hokage-sama." Naruto traveled quickly through the willow trees of Water Country, heading back towards where his team should be waiting at the camp. He had just finished talking with the leading council of the Yuki clan, or what he kept thinking of as Haku's clan. He saw Haku's features in a few of the people there, men and women alike, but had no idea if the person who would become the boy's mother was there. At first, it caused him no small amount of regret that his actions may keep Haku from even being born. There was a chance that his mother may have already fled the clan. They themselves had claimed that some people had already left to try to hide what they were, to escape the fighting. At least Naruto thought it was Haku's mother that was part of the clan. It had been so long that he didn't really remember. Many of the clan seemed surprised that Naruto had even come to them, but not so much after the blonde claimed he owed it to a member of the Yuki clan to try, that he had a debt that he may never be able to fully repay, but this was a small start. Haku was the one who made him as strong as he was, after all. The blonde began to slow down as he felt more presences than he should have at his camp. That didn't bode well. Immediately making a clone, he had it stop and concentrate to prepare Sage Mode as he continued onwards. Hopefully it wouldn't be needed, but it was better to be safe than sorry. Using the purified Kyuubi's chakra would be a last resort, of course, mostly because he didn't know how long it would last, nor how quickly the chakra would regenerate without the Kyuubi's actual consciousness being in him. As he watched the clone sit down and begin to meditate, he pumped up his own chakra, letting it shine like a beacon so his team would know that he was coming. Minato's keen eyes noticed as both Mikoto and one of the mist shinobi in front of them suddenly went rigid. Kakashi must have felt something too, since he had turned his head slightly to look over his shoulder, behind them all. Focusing his own senses in the direction Kakashi was looking, it took him a moment longer to feel what they felt. Someone or something really, really strong was headed directly for them at quick speeds. Judging from the looks on the mist shinobi's faces, they weren't expecting anyone. I will ask again. What are you doing in water country? I can only give you the same answer, Minato sighed. We're here on a diplomatic mission. That's all I've been allowed to say. I bet they are trying to poach the ones with cursed blood, Yagura-sama. If we let them do that, they may use Konoha to regroup and attack us later. What? Minato stared incredulously at the mist shinobi who had spoken. We wouldn't do something like that. You mean poach, or attacking us? The other shinobi sneered at him. Minato was about to retort, but a look from Mikoto made him bite his tongue. She shot a pointed look towards the apparent leader of their forces, who was looking back into the trees behind them in the same general direction that Kakashi had been. The strangest thing was that the very young boy seemed to have the respect of the other Kiri shinobi, yet he had a look on his face that resembled something close to fear. I'm surprised to see you here, Yagura. Minato's head snapped around quickly upon hearing Naruto's voice, and at the same time wondered if that chakra presence he felt before was the other blonde. Not only that, but how did he know this Yagura? Was there something? Who are you? How do you know my name? Since it was the boy who spoke, that confirmed Yagura was his name. But now the exact same question was bouncing around in his head. How did Naruto know such a young boy? I know a lot about you, Yagura. Naruto hopped down from the branch he had been resting on, landing in front of the team, facing the mist group. Are you already acting under compulsion? How long has it been already since you last were truly yourself? Minato watched as the boy's face went through several strange facial contortions, his eyes seeming to light up and fade at various intervals. Why you? What are you saying to Yagura-sama? Take that back this instant. Yagura-sama is incredibly powerful and would crush you like a bug. Once we squash the bloodline rebels, he will be the next Mizukage. Naruto barely spared a glance at the shinobi who spoke, instead choosing to keep his focus on who he knew to be the one-time future Mizukage. Come on, Yagura, I know you're there. You don't want to fight, or even kill, you're very young and you've seen enough of that already to last a lifetime, because of both who and what you are. That comment caused the mist shinobi to fall into ready stances, and even Yagura looked rather shocked. Minato and the rest of the Leaf team, however, settled for looking on in apparent confusion. How do you know things about Yagura-sama? One of the shinobi, likely the senior one after Yagura himself, took a step forward, weapons ready. Naruto tossed him a casual glance. I know a lot of things. I know he doesn't want to fight, but has been compelled to do a lot of things that he doesn't want to. I'm asking him to be strong, and try to break through it. Yagura promptly lurched forward groaning as he clutched at his head. A few of the shinobi moved to help him, but he waved it off, slowly lifting his head to stare at Naruto. He looked about ready to say something, but the shinobi who had been yelling before likely couldn't stand the impasse anymore, and launched himself at Naruto. Minato barely had time to react himself, and he heard Mikoto and Taichi shout out Naruto's name. No action was needed on their part, however, as Naruto merely moved his arm in a slashing motion. The mist shinobi appeared to trip and fall over nothing, then began screaming as his leg fell off just below his knee. Two of the shinobi nearest him moved to staunch the blood flow, while the others were looking unsure about it being a good idea to attack Naruto like their comrade. If you get him to a healer soon, he can probably have his lower leg reattached and still use it. It's a clean cut. I'm not here to fight you or your shinobi, Yagura. The young boy appeared conflicted for several seconds before his eyes cleared and he began barking out orders. I need some people to carry him. We're returning to the village. With a glance at Naruto, he inquired, I trust you will be out of water country by nightfall. You have my word. Very well. It was interesting to meet you. I still don't know your name. Naruto. Yagura nodded slowly. You know more about me than most others, it seems. Strange, because I don't remember you at all. Perhaps you can answer my questions some other time, once I'm. Whatever Yagura was going to say was cut off as he clutched at his forehead again. The next time he opened his eyes, they were dull and unfocused again. Without a word, he turned around and left the area, the mist shinobi following him and carrying their wounded and moaning comrade with them. Once they could no longer hear the movement of the shinobi through the trees, Naruto turned around and offered his team a small smile. Everyone okay? Sorry I was gone for so long. They all looked among each other and shrugged before Taichi spoke. I think we were more ready to die of boredom before anything else. Though that was a tricky situation with that. Yagura. Thanks for showing up when you did. No problem. What was he doing here anyway? Minato shook his head. I have no idea. He didn't believe me either when I said we were here for diplomatic reasons, and that we didn't want to fight. He had just asked us for the third time right before you showed up. I see. I guess it's good I showed up when I did, then. I would have been back sooner, but talking with the Yuki clan took longer than I expected. Did you manage to talk to everyone you planned on? Naruto nodded at Minato. 6 bloodline clans. Mikoto looked shocked at this revelation, as did Taichi. Kakashi seemed nonplussed, but was staring at Naruto with rapt attention. Minato was surprised as well, not just at the fact that Naruto had talked to 6 clans about coming to Konoha, but that he had made it back alive after talking to them. We have until tonight, right? Did you want us to come with you to visit the Kaguya? Oh, I talked to them first. Now Minato was speechless. Everyone knew how bloodthirsty the clan's reputation was, and the fact that Naruto went there and talked to them alone. Minato didn't know if Naruto was brilliant, brave, strong, or incredibly stupid. Or some strange mix of all four. The fact that the other blonde was here with them now and seemed to be very nonchalant about the entire thing spoke volumes in his favor, however. Strangely though, things seemed to be going almost too well. Naruto took all of their incredulous stares in stride, and gave Minato a tight smile. We should probably get out of here tonight, I don't want to test Yagura. We'll be heading back a couple days early, but our objectives have been met for the most part. There were a few clans I didn't get to talk to yet, but maybe we'll get lucky and word will travel between them all. I only got confirmation from the Kaguya that they would come, but the others are going to wait and see. You managed to get the Kaguya clan. Are they really not as bloodthirsty as I've heard? Mikoto was shaking her head, obviously not believing what Naruto was saying. No, they are. I just promised them something they really wanted to hear. What? Naruto shook his head, offering Mikoto a smile along with an apology. I can't say. Hokage-sama's orders. He may tell you if you ask. Mikoto crossed her arms over her chest and frowned, only for Taichi to chuckle and give her a gentle pat on the shoulder. Before anyone could say anything else about the matter, Naruto turned away from the group and went still for a moment. Naruto. Minato stared curiously at Naruto's back. Is something wrong? The other blonde slowly shook his head. No. I just made a clone and used it to store up natural energy in case I needed to use it. I didn't, so I'm just dispelling that energy now. Natural energy. Those were the first words that Kakashi had spoken this entire time, which surprised everyone. One thing that was generally known about Kakashi, he wasn't the type who usually took an active interest in the abilities of others. Something about Naruto must have made the silver-haired boy curious. Yeah. Naruto turned around, and Minato noticed that there was an orange-colored pigmentation around his eyes that was slowly fading away. I can use the energy of nature to augment my own abilities. It comes in handy sometimes. Now Minato was curious too. Can anyone do it? No. You need to have a certain amount of chakra. Ask Ero Sennin, I'm sure he could tell you. Minato's head tilted slightly to the side. Ero Sennin. Naruto's eyes went wide for a second before he groaned and slapped his forehead. Oh, right. He'll probably kill me for saying that to someone else. I'm talking about Jiraiya. You know Jiraiya sensei. Minato wanted to laugh about the Ero Sennin name, but Jiraiya wasn't really a hermit. He just traveled a lot. The other observation about him being perverted was spot on, though pretty much everyone knew about his habits. Yes, I know all of the Densetsu no Sannin. Minato opened his mouth to ask more, but Naruto silenced him with a wave of his hand. You can ask me all the questions you want when we get back to Fire County. I'll answer what I can. But for now, we should probably pack up and get moving. I don't feel like fighting one of the Mist's Jinchuriki if I can help it. There were some shocked squawks from the group, unbelieving that they had come close to fighting a Jinchuriki. Fortunately, though, it didn't take much more prodding for everyone to agree to begin packing, though that didn't stop Mikoto and Minato from glancing at Naruto from time to time. There was definitely more to him than met the eye, that was for certain. When they were about an hour from the nearest port village, Naruto stopped in his tracks and cursed, causing the rest of the group to stop and stare at him curiously. Have any of you ever fought a Biju before? The group all looked at each other, shaking their heads. All of their thoughts immediately went back to the comment Naruto made before they began leaving. Well, there's a first time for everything, I guess. Yagura is the Jinchuriki of the Sanbi. I hope you're ready, because he's hauling ass to get here. I guess he changed his mind about us leaving, or someone changed his mind for him. It was likely Toby. He probably somehow found out that Naruto knew a little too much about Yagura, and was going to send his pet Jinchuriki to kill the blonde. It was still too soon for Naruto to show any of his abilities, especially when the Madara clone could be watching. He'd just have to do his best to work with his team to subdue the Sanbi in any way possible. This is probably going to be a ninjutsu fight. Genjutsu won't work because I'm pretty sure there is one already active on him, and that is why he's attacking us now. Taijutsu is out of the question, you'll just get burnt. Naruto stared at Minato, who was giving him his rapt attention. Do you know any chakra suppression seals? Minato shook his head negatively. Not one that can suppress a Bijuu's chakra. Okay, I know one, but it's not that good and I need to concentrate. That means you guys need to keep him off balance using whatever you can. Before any of them could agree or disagree, Yagura came bursting through the trees, tearing across the ground directly at Naruto. The young boy had the deep red Biju cloak surrounding his body, like all Jinchuriki could do, and the three tails were streaming along behind him. Yagura took a swing at Naruto, and the blonde called up a little bit of the Kyuubi's chakra to coat his hand. Naruto caught the fist, and watched as Yagura's eyes opened in surprise. The blonde faked a wince to make it look like it hurt, then promptly backed off and formed a mud wall between them. As a shadow fell over Naruto, he looked up to see that Tai Chi had expanded as was typical of an Akamaki, and brought his fist down hard on the ground. It was on the other side of the wall so Naruto couldn't see what, if anything, had happened to Yagura. He seriously doubted Tai Chi would even give Yagura a scratch, but all he needed was a distraction. He got that distraction too, as he noticed Mikoto start up one of the renowned Uchiha techniques, the Phoenix Flower. A multitude of small, bird-shaped fiery projectiles were launched toward Yagura. As he mentally prepared himself to create the seal, he absently noticed his father was moving around near Mikoto too, starting up a technique of his own, but he didn't bother watching to see what it was. Tai Chi pulled back his hand right before there were several loud noises from the techniques impacting, but still held his hand with a wince. Biju chakra was not nice to exposed skin. He heard Kakashi's voice as the young teen prepped an attack as well, but tried to ignore it as he pulled out a blank sheet of chakra paper that he kept with himself for drawing seals. Naruto bit his finger, using his own blood as the ink, charging the symbols with his chakra as he drew. The only problem with using his own blood is that he often had to rebite his fingertips several times, as it would heal right in the middle of drawing. For the most part he was able to keep his attention focused on drawing the seal, only having to dodge once as a rather large piece of debris headed his way. He would have to thank Tai Chi later for the heads up. When he finally finished the seal, he was pleased with himself for barely a moment before recognizing the telltale humming noise of the tailed beast ball being charged. Shit. Get out of the way. There is no way to stop that attack. Tai Chi was already behind Yagura, and looked to be ready to attack, only stopping when Naruto told him to get away. Not paying any further attention to the Akamaki, Naruto focused on who was in the path of the attack, only to see Kakashi and Mikoto there. They were too far to hear him, but Minato must have heard the original shout, as he was already moving towards them. Being closer to the raven-haired woman, he simply grabbed Mikoto and shouted towards Kakashi, then bodily hauled his old teammate away. That just left Kakashi, who was already turning to leave the blast area, but Naruto knew the area of effect for the menacing ball. The silver-haired kid wouldn't make it out of the blast radius in time. He didn't even know if Minato would make it in time either, but as he couldn't split his attention to watch, he could only hope so. Knowing what was needed to get Kakashi out of the way in time, Naruto felt for the Kyuubi's chakra still within him and pulled upon it, filtering it through his own will courtesy of the seal that was still present. His body lit up with a bright flash of yellow, and he immediately shot off faster than any watching eye could follow, becoming nothing more than a yellow blur. He was upon Kakashi in a second, scooping the young boy up in his arms and moving away in another, slightly slower flash. Naruto immediately dropped the technique as soon as they settled down behind a tree. Kakashi was staring at him in shock, only to let out a yelp as the little bit of forest near them suddenly erupted. The blonde braced himself and shielded Kakashi as best he could from all of the debris that the blast kicked up, pummeling his back and arms as he hovered over the other shinobi. When it all ended, he let out a grunt as he started climbing to his feet. Kakashi looked to still be in shock from what had just happened, so he grabbed the boy's shoulders and shook him slightly to try and gain his attention. He did focus on the blonde, if barely. I need to go place the seal on Yagura. I'll either be right back or send one of the others after you. Do you understand? Kakashi nodded his head somewhat absently. Naruto just hoped he was coherent enough to understand him. Not wasting any more time, the blonde moved swiftly through what remained of the nearby trees, maneuvering around them so that he could hopefully come up behind Yagura. The Jinchuriki was still sending out a ton of chakra, so it was impossible not to know his location. Once he got close enough, he spotted Yagura in what Killer Bee had called version 2, in which the Bijuu's chakra became closer to a second skin and not just a cloak. Yagura was currently sitting in the middle of the clearing, as if inspecting his handiwork, and looking around absently while growling. Realizing it was now or never, Naruto shot out from the nearest tree, running up behind the Jinchuriki. It didn't notice his footsteps until he was almost upon him, and tried to bring its tails around to swipe at him. Naruto managed to dodge the first two, but the third one clipped his leg and nearly sent him tumbling. The pain was immense, but it wasn't anything he wasn't already used to. Clearing his mind and trying to focus, Yagura roared right in his face, pulling his arm back to likely take a swipe at him, which helped to wake him up a bit more. His body felt like it was on autopilot, and he quickly sprung forward with his good leg, then reached up with his hand just fast enough to slap the seal he had made onto Yagura's forehead. The effects were nearly instantaneous. The Jinchuriki began to groan as his arm dropped back to his side and then the chakra gradually began to recede. In moments the vile chakra had completely disappeared, and a very much aware Yagura was left sitting there, wide-eyed and panting. What did you do to me? My mind, it's clear again. Naruto grunted, pulling a length of gauze out of one of his pouches and lifted up his pant leg, wincing at what he saw. The tail that hit him pierced him clean through, leaving a clean hole through his calf that was easily several centimeters in diameter. He could literally see the muscles and skin in his legs slowly knitting itself back together, both thanks to his heritage and the Kyuubi's chakra. He wrapped the gauze around his calf as he responded, I know a thing or three about seals. I placed one on you that suppressed your Biju. Apparently your Biju controls you, and someone else is controlling your Biju. I see. I feel tired. Because the Bijuu's chakra is being suppressed in your system, when it normally travels through it freely. The closest example is that it's a mild form of chakra exhaustion. The seal's power will drain eventually, and you will return to normal. Yagura nodded, his eyes obviously drooping as he tried to stay awake. Thank you, even if this moment is fleeting. You're welcome. Do what you can to fight the impulses. I have a feeling that if you don't, I'll probably never see you again. Not alive, at least. How do you know so? Naruto knew what he was going to ask, but apparently the young boy could not keep himself awake any longer, and promptly fell over on his back, snoring. It was right at that moment that his team came running over. Naruto. He looked to his side, to see Kakashi and Taichi running up to him, while Minato was moving at a slower pace, holding Mikoto's arm and trying to keep her steady. The two of them looked a little worse for wear, so they might not have made it completely out of the blast radius in time. Hey guys, is everyone okay? They all murmured their affirmatives, even Kakashi. Most of them were staring at his gauze-wrapped leg, as if wondering just how bad that wound was. Are you going to be able to travel? I saw that tail punch a hole in your leg. Minato winced as he nodded his head towards Naruto's leg, but the other blonde shrugged it off. I'll be good to go in about an hour or so. Uzumaki have slightly advanced healing factors, as you may know. Minato's eyebrows raised up. Really? I didn't know it was a clan trait, I just thought it was something random for Kushina. Naruto gave the other manner, do you really think that? Look. To which Minato pressed his lips into a straight line and shook his head. Hopefully the other blonde knew a thing or two about Kyuubi being quite the boost to the natural Uzumaki toughness. Heck, hopefully he just knew about the Kyuubi in general, by now. Judging by Naruto's comment and Minato's response, he probably did. With a grunt, Naruto pushed himself to his feet. We should get moving as fast as we can. We'll leave Yagura here, he'll wake up in 15 minutes or so. I don't know what state of mind he'll be in either, but I'd rather not be around to find out. Are you sure? Could we take him with us too? Taichi began to ask what Naruto felt would be something obvious, but Minato cut him off before Naruto could say anything. No, not a good idea. He's a Jinchuriki, and Kiri will go to war with us for killing or capturing him. We don't want to start the war early. We're not ready. Besides that, I don't know how strong the genjutsu on him is, it might be too risky to break. He did know that it was strong enough to be held by Toby for years, and if he could break it, he didn't want to come under even more scrutiny. Trying to lure away bloodline clans was enough. Naruto nodded in agreement, and that seemed to seal the deal for the rest of the team as no one commented further. Taichi and Kakashi both moved over to Naruto, each one moving one of the blonde's arms across their shoulders. The weight distribution was slightly awkward since the Akamaiki was taller than he was, while Kakashi was a bit shorter, though he appreciated the gesture all the same. It wasn't really necessary, but he didn't want to turn away what was likely a symbol of trust and goodwill from his team. Now, he just had to think about how to explain his abilities to them and to the Hokage when he reported in. Hopefully Kakashi was the only one who saw his golden form, otherwise he'd probably be answering a lot more questions than he felt like. Maybe he'd get lucky and convince the kid that he was hallucinating because of the Bijuu's chakra. Yeah, right. You know, you're kinda cute in a pathetic sort of way when you concentrate on those maps. Naruto looked up, only to see Kuritsuki looking across the table at him. She had taken to some light flirting with him as of late, which was more amusing than anything else. If someone told his father or the now deceased Shuchikage that their son and granddaughter, respectively, would begin flirting with each other, both men would probably laugh and then declare whoever told them to be insane. She was perhaps a year or two older than him, but he had never bothered to ask. These days no one really cared about age anyway. People sure had changed plenty though, and both he and Kuritsuki were two of those who had. It went without saying that he was certainly less cheery and more down to earth, no longer the bastion of sunshine that he once was. Watching your close friends be lost to fighting or to the Red Moon Genjutsu day after day took its toll, and had been for nearly 2 years since the Fourth Great Shinobi War began. It had been over a year since he had lost two of the people closest to him, Tsunade and Sakura. The only other person alive that he was even somewhat close to on a personal level was Kakashi, but the times they actually got to sit down and talk were few and far between. He didn't really know Kuritsuki well until 5 or 6 months ago, when he stumbled across her when she was crying over the death of her father, a skilled man who had been one of their generals. At first she completely recoiled at any attempt he made of soothing her pain, not because of who he was but just because it was the way she was. She hated showing weakness. Of course he hung around until she was feeling better anyway, just out of principle, and pretty much let himself become a punching bag of sorts so that she could vent her frustrations. He didn't know she appreciated it until a week later, when she returned from one of her assignments and brought him lunch completely out of the blue. They gradually started seeing each other more and more, though he didn't know if it was a conscious effort on either of their parts or if it just sort of happened. He wasn't sure who started the flirting between them, but he figured it was probably her since she was definitely a lot more outgoing than he was. Somewhere along the line she had convinced him to get one of his ears pierced, to accentuate the bad boy look he had going on sometimes, which she really seemed to like for some reason. Naruto had no idea how exactly he looked like a bad boy, other than perhaps a bad case of bedhead and a persistent 5 o'clock shadow. He had no idea why Hei went along with her crazy idea either, but did it anyway because there wasn't really a reason not to. Along the same vein, he had made an off-handed comment at some point that he had a thing for longer hair. That was probably about 2 months ago, and she hadn't cut her hair since. When they first met she kept it quite short, and now it was reaching down to just a little above her shoulders, kept in a short ponytail. He had to admit to himself that it definitely looked good. When he asked her about it the first time, she just winked at him and didn't explain, though her action was enough of an explanation. Looking up from the maps, he shot her a small grin, cute enough that you like what you see, then. That seemed to set off some sort of spark, as her eyes lit up, definitely. In fact, once I get back from this latest job Darui wants me to do, I'm thinking I'd show you just how much. Naruto found himself chuckling instead of blushing. Normally something like this would have made him stutter and blush red like a tomato, but having been flirting and joking with her for a little while now, it felt natural. This wasn't the first time she had tossed some innuendo his way, but it would be the first time he planned on actually responding to it. Sure, if you behave, maybe I'll let you examine what's underneath the uniform. She actually blushed a little, then licked her lips and gave him a mocking salute. Is that an order, Uzumaki-sama? Do you want me to make it one? She nodded slowly as her hand dropped to her hip. I'll hurry back, I promise. Naruto rose to his feet, walking around the table towards her. Her eyes went wide for a moment before they narrowed and she grinned as he walked up in front of her. Without saying another word, he cupped her chin in his hands and kissed her gently on the lips, letting them linger for a moment. When he pulled away, her face moved forward slightly, as if she didn't want him to stop. However, his hand was still on her chin and kept her from moving her lips back onto his. Kuritsuki. Her question came out as more of a sensual hum rather than a coherent word, as she looked up at him with half-lidded eyes. Be safe. Don't get distracted thinking about this, or me. Do what you have to do and come back. That snapped her from her slight daze, and she tossed him a Cheshire grin before turning around and walking for the tent exit, obviously swaying her hips. Who do you think I am? I can handle it. I'll be back in no time at all. Naruto let out a sigh and a short laugh as she moved through the tent flap, leaving him alone once again. Shaking his head, he grinned as he looked over the maps and the recent scouting reports. He never thought he'd get together with Kuritsuki of all people. She'd lasted this long, and he knew she was strong enough to be there with him until the end. It was strange how the war had made them odd bedfellows. He never thought he'd be interested in anyone again after losing Sakura so suddenly last year. Unfortunately, he didn't know then that he would never see Kuritsuki again. Come in. Naruto grabbed the handle and opened the door to the Hokage's office, quickly moving through and closing the door behind him. When he finally looked towards the Hokage, he stopped short, surprised to see who was standing in the room with him. Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Tsunade were all standing at attention, though giving him rather impassive looks. After a few seconds of staring between them, Naruto managed to find his voice. Sorry, I just got back and, never mind, I can always report in later, Hokage-sama. The Sandaime waved him off. Nonsense. I'm most curious to hear about your mission. I think my students would also be more likely to believe what I'm trying to explain to them if they heard about your capabilities directly from you. Naruto nodded and moved forward, consciously trying to avoid getting too close to the snake summoner. He had no idea if the man noticed, and didn't care either. The less he had to deal with the man now, the better. While Orochimaru wasn't the same man he was in the future, yet, he didn't know how far the man had already fallen. The few labs they had found so far could only attest that he ran experiments, but so far none of them were on people. I'd like to say the mission was a complete success. We had a little run-in with the Mist's Jinchuriki, however, so I'm not so sure if anything will come from that. Sarutobi's eyes narrowed, and all of the Sannin tensed. Explain. Naruto nodded again. As I was returning to our camp from meeting with the Yuki clan, I sensed some pretty large chakra signatures, including one that felt like a biju. I got to the camp as fast as I could, only to arrive in the middle of what seemed to be some sort of verbal diplomatic spar between Minato and Yagura, Mist's newest Jinchuriki. As the blonde went on to explain the rest of the encounter, including how he had talked the young Jinchuriki into leaving him alone as well as their encounter later, various expressions passed over the Sandaime's face, and some interesting gasps and grumbles came from the direction of the Sannin. It wasn't until the very end when he explained how he stopped a Jinchuriki that Jiraiya finally felt he had to talk. You mean to tell me you stopped a Jinchuriki with a suppression seal you wrote while on the battlefield? I realize I'm not a sealing expert, but I'd like to think I'm a fair hand at it. I don't think I've ever even heard of that before. Naruto shrugged, and tried to keep a straight face. Jiraiya was the one who used to use the seal on him in the future, after all. I'm no expert with seals, but this one should seem fairly obvious. It just takes a decent amount of chakra and concentration to prepare. I can show you how to make one, if you'd like. Jiraiya's face twitched for the briefest of moments before he grinned slightly. Sure, thanks. What about you, Orochimaru? This sort of thing sounds right up your alley. The snake summoner shook his head negatively. I prefer ninjutsu. Seals aren't my style. Naruto had to bite his tongue to keep from making any scathing comments, and was glad he did when the Hokage looked at him again. How did your main objective turn out, and what is the status of your team? My team is fine, no injuries to report. My left calf was speared by one of the Sanbi Jinchuriki's tails, but I have no trouble walking anymore, so I'm pretty sure it's healed by. What? Naruto stopped speaking, cut off suddenly by Tsunade, who was simply staring at him incredulously. You were speared by a Bijuu's chakra and you aren't suffering from chakra poisoning. How? Naruto opened his mouth and closed it a few times, wondering how much to say. So he settled for, I'm sturdy. That didn't go over very well, as Tsunade literally threw him into a nearby chair and proceeded to unwrap the bloody bandage around his calf. He thought he heard a chuckle from Jiraiya, but it was quickly overshadowed by the gasp from Tsunade. How? I don't even see a scar. Her hand was glowing a light green as she inspected his calf. I'm an Uzumaki. Longevity and enhanced healing is our blood limit of sorts, you know. Tsunade looked at him sharply, and then at the Hokage, who slowly nodded. Even if you are an Uzumaki, the only one I know of who heals that fast is a result of special circumstances. I don't see how it's possible for you to not be affected by the chakra at all. Naruto couldn't do anything more than look innocent and shrug again. I don't know. It's been like this for as long as I can remember. Of course he knew why his abilities in that area were enhanced, still having Biju chakra in him now made him relatively immune. He was honestly surprised Tsunade didn't pick up on it, but then she was probably only doing a surface scan of his chakra and not the kind of stuff they did in the hospital. He considered sharing the secret for a moment before siding against it. The blonde was still being very careful about what he said in front of anyone else other than the Hokage, for now. Tsunade seemed to take his comments at face value at least, though she didn't look too happy about it. She gave him a critical eye as she rose to her feet, offering him a hand to help him stand as well. He took a moment to really look at her now, and noticed that she was older looking than he remembered, but her grip was just as strong. She apparently hadn't taken to permanently rejuvenating herself yet, as there were small lines on her face around her lips, and crow's feet in the corners of her eyes. Unlike the youth she tried to emulate in his time, right now she radiated a sort of mature beauty that he could easily appreciate. Other than that, she looked mostly the same from what he remembered. It took all his willpower not to engulf her in a hug, but a quick mental check reminded him that she likely wouldn't appreciate it right now. He thought he was looking discreetly, but he forgot who he was dealing with. He saw her eyes narrow, and he quickly murmured his thanks and looked away, back towards the Hokage. If she was going to say anything, she decided not to, and moved back over to her teammates. Sensei, if you don't need us any longer, I have some research to do, and I'm certain that Tsunade would like to visit Shizune. Not to mention that I would bet Jiraiya-kun has some research to do. Naruto was honestly surprised by the tone of voice Orochimaru used. He actually sounded amused when he mentioned Jiraiya's research. Was this what a normal Orochimaru was like before he went crazy? Very well. I need to finish up with Naruto too, and then get back to my own work. Dismissed. His three students all nodded, and then Jiraiya and Orochimaru offered him nods as well before they turned and walked for the door. Tsunade simply stared at him for a moment before her lips formed a tight smile and she shook her head, following her teammates. Once the door closed behind them, Naruto once again turned to face the Hokage, and continued with his report. I only got confirmation from the Kaguya clan that they would come join, and I promised them that Bar-chan would take a look at their blood to see if she could find out what the disease was that was killing them. Hiruzen leaned back in his seat. The Kaguya. So they went for it. Interesting. I've heard that they are a rather bloodthirsty clan, however. That's only partially true. I had to fight one of their members because they didn't believe me at first, but after they were willing to listen we discussed things normally. I think whatever the disease in their blood is also makes them act somewhat irrationally, if only because they're frustrated with their looming deaths. Sarutobi rubbed at the stubble on his chin. Very well. But you will be the one to inform Tsunade about what needs to be done. When will they be here? Soon. Likely within the month. Alright. What about any other clans? I didn't get any promises out of them, other than that they'd think about it. Once word gets out about where the Kaguya have gone though, some others may follow. The civil war there is still in its infancy and many of the bloodline clans have fled from the village itself to their old clan grounds, so the non-bloodline faction will have a hard time keeping them all in water country should they try to leave. Hiruzen nodded slowly, propping his elbows on his desk and pressing his fingertips together. I guess I'll have to prepare some of our empty districts for any new arrivals. If we get a lot, we may need to modify the walls. Quote. Naruto's eyes went wide, he had never even considered the space issue. They may start needing to build homes outside the walls. His thoughts were quickly interrupted by a chuckle from the Hokage. Well, at least things will be getting interesting, it seems. Other than the skirmishes we've been watching, things have been fairly slow as of late. Normally I wouldn't care, but it seems the paperwork load has been increasing too. It was Naruto's turn to grin and chuckle, but Sarutobi just smiled and shook his head. If that's all, you're dismissed. Oh, and I know you're from the future, but I wouldn't suggest calling Tsunade, Bar-chan, to her face if you want to keep your head on your shoulders. The blonde gulped and nodded as he turned towards the door. I also need to talk to you some more about Orochimaru. The Hokage frowned slightly. Yes, I remember. Stop by tomorrow, we'll discuss him then. Mikoto sighed deeply as she let her head rest back against the stone behind her in the hot spring. The warm water worked wonders when it came to relieving stress, and that was something she had plenty of lately. It had been a while since she actually had some free time, both from doing missions and from clan responsibilities, so she was going to make the most of it and the hot spring was her first stop. Luckily it was actually rather quiet here today, unlike the last few times she had been. There were only 4 other women in the area, and they must have all arrived together since they were chatting amongst themselves near one of the corners. She had her back to the stone she was leaning against, which was near the outside wall just in case Sensei was in town. She had never been a victim, but she had heard the stories. There was another small splash near the entrance, and Mikoto looked over to see Kushina finally enter the area. She had dragged the younger woman along with her, first and foremost because she was her best friend, but also because she just knew the redhead likely had tons of questions about their mission. Minato had been busy since they got back yesterday trying to work on some kind of technique that he had been testing little by little over the past year or so. Apparently during their mission he came across something that he believed would further help him with the technique. She honestly had no idea what it was he was working on. Kushina may have a better idea, but even she often just shook her head and shrugged whenever she was asked. Mikoto, why are you all the way over there? Kushina began to groan as she pushed her way through the warm water, a white towel wrapped around her torso. Mikoto noticed as the other women stopped talking to look over, then quickly went back to gossip as they noticed the bloody habanero. I usually come over here so my back is to the outside wall. Just in case Sensei is in town. Kushina made an face, then nodded and scooted over next to Mikoto so their arms barely touched, settling with her back to the rock as well. So. The older woman tilted her head slightly and raised an eyebrow as she waited for Kushina to continue. When she didn't, she continued the question, so, what? The redhead giggled, then looked at her friend with a grin. You already know what I want to know. How was the mission? I can't get anything out of Minato-kun, he's so focused on his new jutsu again. Mikoto slowly shrugged, resting her head back against the large stone once again. For the first few days it was incredibly boring. Just sitting in camp doing nothing. On the last day, the Mist's newest Jinchuriki showed up with an escort. He looked like a little kid, but he had so much power. Kushina gasped, wide-eyed, isn't he one of the faction leaders of the Bloody Mist? He's the one that started the civil war going on there, right? Is he really that young? The raven-haired woman shrugged. I don't know the details, but from what I heard while there that sounds about right. He didn't seem to believe us when we said we were there on a diplomatic mission of sorts, but finally did when Naruto-san arrived and managed to convince him. Kushina's eyes lit up a bit at the mention of Naruto. She had likely been waiting to hear information about her relative. How did Naruto Aniki do? Mikoto leaned her head back against the rock and sighed as she closed her eyes, letting out a bitter chuckle. He saved our lives. There was silence for a moment before Kushina caught Mikoto's arm in a death grip. What? You and the others almost died. Mikoto winced at the grip on her arm, but tried not to pay it too much mind. The redhead always did tend to be a clingy person when those she cared about were threatened, probably as a result of losing her clan in Izushio. The Jinchuriki, Yagura, apparently changed his mind and chased us down not too long after we left. Naruto-san asked us to keep him distracted while he drew up a seal. Just as he was about to use the seal he had made, the boy launched a huge attack at us, and I wasn't able to get out of the way in time. At least not without Minato's help. Mikoto let her head hang forward slightly, her loose, damp hair hiding most of the expression on her face. Naruto-san somehow managed to shout a warning in time. I wasn't really paying attention after hearing that as I tried to get away, but when Minato grabbed me I was at a good angle to see Naruto-san. He was near Kakashi-kun and looked to be glowing, though I was moving too quickly to really notice. However, 1 second I thought he was there, and the next both he and Kakashi-kun were gone. She let out a sigh as she finished. I didn't think about it too much before now. Minato and I got caught in the edge of the blast from Yagura's attack, and we were more worried about getting home without any further attacks against us. I was probably just seeing things. Kushina had started going pale the moment Mikoto made mention of the Jinchuriki. It wasn't every day they were discussed, let alone encountered or even fought. Mikoto knew about Kushina and the Kyuubi, as did the rest of her team because Kushina told them. There were a few others that she believed knew about the Kyuubi as well, but it wasn't something that anyone really talked about. The large majority of Konoha was likely completely oblivious that the Kyuubi Jinchuriki was even in Konoha. Mikoto continued, anyway, after saving us, he went back to place a seal on Yagura. He got injured when he did it, but the seal worked, and the Bijuu's chakra went away, leaving only the boy there. Yagura passed out shortly after, and Naruto-san wrapped up his leg before we left. That's it. Naruto Anarchy, he fought a Jinchuriki and won. Is he okay? Mikoto nodded, and let out another sigh. He made it back to Konoha with us and wasn't slowed down at all. Naruto had saved them all, and battled and won against another who was both a Jinchuriki and rumored to be the leader of the anti-bloodline faction. Who knew how strong he was? Heck, even if that's as strong as he really was, he could probably beat a lot of people. Even when injured he didn't complain once when Minato requested they set a grueling pace to return to Konoha. She absently began to wonder who would be stronger, Naruto or her fiancé, Fugaku. Mikoto, do you think I should tell him? Tell what? Kushina gave Mikoto an exasperated look. Tell Naruto Anarchy that I'm the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Just in case, she explained. Mikoto stared at her best friend for a second before offering her best friend a rather somber grin. Naruto-san doesn't really strike me as the kind of person who would care if you are or aren't. He seemed to know that Yagura was a Jinchuriki, and at first managed to keep him from attacking us just by talking to him. Besides, if he knew that the mist had won, maybe the Hokage already told him you are. Maybe you're right. That means, hey, what are you doing, Ero-senin? A voice that both women recognized was clear enough to make it over the fence, causing both of them to go rigid and look at each other in shock. Ero-senin. I'm not Ero, hey. Naruto, right. Be quiet, or you'll alert the lovely ladies on the far side of the bath. Both girls visibly relaxed, realizing that they were fully hidden behind the rock and couldn't be seen. Doing the research I heard about, I take it. Yeah. What of it? Did you want some pointers? No thanks. I was just making sure that Kushina-chan and Mikoto-san weren't in there. I know better than to peep on those two. There was a brief period of cackling laughter from the other side of the fence before Jiraiya continued, boo, you got a thing for both of them, eh? Both girls were still staring at each other slack-jawed now as they continued listening to the barely audible conversation. Not really, no. Yes, they are both beautiful women, but they are both spoken for and I know better. Kushina immediately blushed crimson, hiding her face behind her hands. Mikoto, on the other hand, was completely rigid in total shock. She had been called pretty and attractive before, but she got the feeling it was more out of obligation than anything else. But not even Fugaku had ever called her beautiful. Sure, it was only a word, but it was a rare one for her to hear, and it was never applied to her. She realized that the standard Konoha Jonin attire wasn't exactly the most flattering clothing, and it is probably what kept other people from being more interested in her. Besides the fact that she was the Uchiha heir. Apparently it involuntarily made her rather intimidating, or so she'd heard from the few other friends she had. Well, aren't you charming? Look but don't touch mindset, I see. I probably shouldn't even be looking. Even that makes me feel guilty as hell. Especially because Kushina-chan looks up to me like a brother. By this time Kushina had completely sunk into the water almost up to her ears. Mikoto, meanwhile, was straining hers to pick up every word. I know where you're coming from, Naruto. Both ladies could hear a loud sigh of exasperation from the other side. I know better than to peep on Kushina, because I value my manhood too much. Mikoto was on my genin team with Minato and Taichi, so that would just be wrong on so many levels if I peeped on her. Both women held their breath as they waited for the response, which wasn't long in coming. Good. I was just making sure. Anyway, I have to go find Bar-chan on Hokage-sama's orders, so just don't stick around long enough to get caught, Ero-senin. Bar-chan. And hey, I told you I'm not whatever. Leave me alone. Right. See you. Mikoto still couldn't believe the conversation she had just overheard. Kushina was still as red as could be, and was obviously trying to compose herself. She was visibly startled when Mikoto made a move to stand up. Mikoto nay. The raven-haired woman tossed her friend a vicious grin. You can stay here, I think I should go have a nice chat with Sensei about his habits. As Mikoto moved away from behind the rock, they all heard a loud yelp followed by a string of curses come from behind the wall, including the 4 other women who were in the other corner of the springs. The noise caused Kushina to smile, and she clenched her own towel around herself. Wait up, I think I'll join you in your talk with Ero-senin. Already a few rooftops away, Naruto suddenly felt like bursting into laughter. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.